Hello, my name is Hollis Bailey. Welcome to this nighttime edition of Lessons I Learned in 2023. So this is a part of an email series that I'm doing in the beginning of 2024. And today's theme is physical detoxification. So a little backstory, because I've already prefaced this story with a little bit of information. And really, this is all not just to share my personal story, because I think my personal stories are cool, but in sharing personal stories, people can relate. And what I went through in 2023 was finally listening and applying what I teach and preach on probably the deepest level I've done so far. So I've explained in a couple of previous emails that intellectual knowledge is nothing other than information to our brains. If we don't bring that knowledge, that's important, it's awareness, but if we don't bring that knowledge down into our emotional body, down clear into our subconscious, into all of our subtle bodies, into our spiritual body even, and going even further than that, all the way into our soul. I talk all the time in the 6-month coaching program that I teach called Higher. If you haven't taken Higher, if you haven't heard of Higher, I highly recommend joining me for this coaching program. Right now, as of today, January 15th, 2023, I have it 50% off for the group that starts in March 4th. So that's a crazy good deal. And this is because I really want to make this accessible to everybody, because it is timeless information. It is the new paradigm shift. It is very applicable and easy to understand. But again, the whole point of doing this 6-month program is so that you have time to practice what you're learning. And this is why I'm sharing these videos in my personal story in 2023, because it's crazy what I'm going to share today in terms of how I learned to listen to my soul on the deepest level I have so far. And it's because I've learned these skills that I teach in Higher, and I've been practicing them and teaching them for the last 4 years. So they've become part of who I am. And this last year really proved that by doing everything that I teach in this program over and over and over again, it's timeless information, that it freaking works. It works, it creates massive change, it creates huge breakthroughs. And this last year in particular, 2023, it was a big year for everyone in terms of ending karmic relationships and beginning new cycles. So this is huge. When we talk about karma, we're not talking about, most often anyways, we're not talking about lifetimes we've had or things we've been working on for like one lifetime. For most of these karmic cycles, they've been going on for up to 2,000 years. And the way we learn here in the 3D is through relationships, because we're each other's mirrors. So we can't do it alone. We have to have a partner in front of us, a friend in front of us. Sometimes it's nature. Okay, plants and animals and the natural world can also be a mirror. But we came to live and learn through relationships. So in particular, I'm going to share a story to preface the big story that I'm going to share about today in terms of physical detoxification and how impactful that was for me last year, and how I'm going to start bringing it back into my practice. I began my whole journey as a coach, as a health coach, and as a nutritionist, and I outgrew it and studied other things, went a few different routes. I also had a baby. I also went through a large period of stress with getting married and married to an alcoholic husband, going through that whole separation, divorce things, and processing, not like blaming or shaming anyone, like really processing my own mirrors around that. What attracted that? What was I available for? Learning how to love and accept people, because I love this man so much. He's choosing not to be in our lives, and coming around full circle to being so angry and so resentful and so confused and such a victim really in all of that, coming full circle to just being like, he can be whoever he wants to be, and that's none of my business. That is huge. And if anyone knows me personally, Anger and resentment have been something that I personally came in to experience. Our souls choose these different flavors of emotions, and we will experience them over and over and over again until we learn how to befriend them, until we learn how to accept that that's a part of our maybe reactionary mechanism, and so that we can catch ourselves maybe when we're in it and dial it back a notch, or eventually get to that place of seeing where we're going, feeling the energy rising in our body, not wanting to withhold it, but certainly not wanting to take it out on someone, you know, to a degree that's really destructive. So major breakthroughs in that. I can say, because of what I went through in 2023, my personal process, what I'm going to share with you right now today, like, I have annoyance that lingers. I have some sadness and some lingering angry moments, but it's not every day. It's love and gratitude, and really just acceptance finally, in claiming my 50% in this relationship. We have a daughter together, so we're always going to be in a relationship whether he's in my life or not. And I'm using this one because it was, for me, the end of so many relationships, like this, the patterns, the ways of being, the ways of hiding, the ways of manipulating, the being the abuser and being the victim, these toxic behaviors that we learn, either we come in with because it's part of our karma. Again, we choose the conditioning we come in with, and we are evolving from that. So there's no shame in any of this behavior. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to get it. The point is, because for our soul, our soul doesn't matter for 5, 10, 18, 40, 50, 60, or on our deathbed as we're learning the lesson and we finally get it. Like, to our soul, it's just a blip on the radar. So age doesn't matter. Now, it's kind of a cool construct to use when we're down here on planet Earth, because we can see how other people our age, our age that we made up, are acting, right? So we can kind of like make it a vision or a goal to get to, but it still doesn't matter. We're made up of hundreds of thousands of parts of these frozen pieces of time. Many of us are acting like children. When we're triggered, we're triggered into younger parts of ourselves, and all that really means is that those parts of us that are younger and that are triggered and that are angry still, or sad, or unable to process what's going on in front of them in a mature way, it's because we weren't able to do it back then. So we just learn how to recognize it and become aware of why we're behaving the way we're behaving. So that's the knowledge. And then we need to allow it to sink in. Okay, we need to take the time and the space. And for me, this in 2023 was the year of contemplation. I learned so much. I learned, or maybe relearned, the information intellectually. But this time in 2023, I really took the time to sit and let it sink in. So I allowed the emotions to move. I did a lot of breath work, 2 40-day commitments of breath work in 2023. So 40 days in a row of breathing, essentially. That is consciously moving energy. So sometimes we can do this, actually a lot of times it should be part of our daily routine, or if not daily, every other day, 3-4 times a week, to consciously move energy. So that can be dance, that can be going to the ocean to swim, that can be just moving our body and shaking our body and doing like some of the catharsis work that I do and teach, the conscious breath work, just moving energy. Maybe that's like some kind of creative energy. So you're channeling energy in a different way that's not just thinking and letting the mind run rampant. So I felt like 2023 was a big breakthrough year for me. And what was my motivation? Well, my motivation was feeling stuck. So my motivation was being on the verge of another one of those like dark nights of the soul, like feeling really frustrated. The beginning of the year started out amazing. I was in the flow of my business. I had, started feeling free finally from this relationship, feeling really confident in my motherhood. Sophia, my daughter, was 3, and just the beginning of a really fun age. So the first couple of months of 2023 for me were amazing. And then the soul had something else planned for me. Like it does for all of us. We can't predict, we can't control our outcomes. We're here to learn. So again, putting a plug in for my programs, for my retreats. If you want to integrate this knowledge that I'm teaching you, and really learn how to zoom out and live your life from a zoomed out perspective, then it takes practice. So join me in that 6-month program. Me and a whole cohort of individuals also going through this process at the same time. It's phenomenal, the group support, and not having to do it alone. And plus it's lifelong skills. But anyways, around March or April, so last year I was 2.5 years post-divorce, getting into the personal story now, okay? So try and relate it to you and what you can take home from what I share, because that's really what I want to share these stories with you for, is because I often find if someone shares a personal story, I can relate to it. And I feel like there's so many people who can relate to these same dynamics, at least if it's not the same exact story. So anyways, I'm 2.5 years post-divorce. I've done a lot of work to let go of this dynamic of, it had been quite a long time since we talked. And our relationship dynamics, again, were me always having to reach out. And so that was just feeding, perpetuating the right to be angry. And so I'm ready to date. Great, awesome, cool. So I jump back in the dating world, end up meeting this man, and my first intimate encounter brought up so much immediately. It was like I was curled up in a ball the day afterwards, and this is a very respectful relationship, a guy I was into but not madly in love with, but very safe, very comfortable, and a conscious decision to share intimacy. And the next day I'm curled up in a ball, feeling so ashamed, feeling as if I had cheated on my ex-husband. All of a sudden, all of these emotions were up. The grief, the almost fear. I remember feeling afraid, what is he gonna do if he finds out? And then there's the other part of me going, it's been 2.5 years. What in the heck is it going to take? How much more work do I have to do around this? Of course, there's patterns, contemplating what our patterns are. Yes, I have a tendency towards codependency. So I've been on both ends of the spectrum in terms of being an addict and being a codependent. And oftentimes these two labels in relationships with addicts come into play. So I've been on both ends, and in this relationship, it was more the codependent. And so all of these emotions that came up for me, and I decided to sit with them. And just be and accept them. And over and over and over again. I cried wells of tears. Now, when we tap into these wells of tears, and this happens all the time with my clients, this is exactly why I teach a 6-month program, not a 2-month program, or not a package of 6 sessions anymore. My coaching has pretty much turned into only this, of working with someone for a long term, because we have layers, and getting deeper and deeper into these layers. When I tapped into that wellspring of grief and of shame and of guilt, it's triggered by my ex-husband, but it's not all from him. This is stuff that I've been holding on to for a really long time. So long story short, I've been sitting with this for really a couple of months, most of the beginning of the summer. And I would encounter him on the beach, and he's moved on, he has a girlfriend and he wants nothing to do with me, and I'm not engaging much, but I still just keep feeling these same feelings, and I felt like I was looping, and I was getting so frustrated, and I'm like, soul, universe, and in these times when I feel like I'm just at my wit's end, stuck, that's when I'll throw my hands up. We should all do it beforehand. That's wisdom. But I remember, it was sometime in August, and I was just laying there on the floor doing another meditation around the same damn thing, And I was just like, help. And a few days later, this post was made by a woman in town who's a colon hydrotherapist. So this is where it's going to get a little dirty. I'm going to tell you all the dirty details about my physical cleansing. But she had posted something about doing a liver detox cleanse, and I was like, yep, I'm going to go to that talk. I went. Like I said, I did have a knowledge of this cleanse, even though I never did it when I was practicing nutrition 10 years ago. But I did have a knowledge of this cleanse. Do not recommend doing this on your own. They do sell the books. I can recommend what books to get, but I highly recommend doing this with colon hydrotherapy. And at the very least, enemas, at-home enemas, but the colon hydrotherapy sessions can be a lot more beneficial because you can flush for a longer period of time. And in the way that she holds space, and in the way that I was just so ready. You know, it was like, again, my soul delivered this message that I was holding on to all of these emotions around my ex. I did everything in my toolbox to process these emotions, and yet they were lingering. And I asked for help, and what was given to me? This cleanse. So this is all soul guided. And again, going back to the just gratitude, so much gratitude for my ex-husband, because again, he's the one that is, by existing, the one who's propelling me to this next level of healing. Now, of course, I had thought about getting healthy and, you know, going back into detoxification and moving my body in different ways for a couple of years, because my body, I knew it was very inflamed, even before pregnancy, but definitely after pregnancy, and then going through the divorce and the stress and eating so much stuff that I wouldn't normally eat and not exercising. And you know, there is no shame in not finding the energy or the motivation or the willpower to force yourself into things when you are feeling like crap, because it builds on itself slowly. And there's also other forces at work, because when I looked at what I shed in terms of parasites, infections, Candida was a very persistent infection and has been for many years for me in my body. You know, those entities, essentially, they're manifested as imbalances, but they've served a purpose. It's not like we're victims to them. We've created them. I look at Candida as a protection, as a protective shield. Of course, it's not healthy for our body, but as a child who didn't feel safe a lot of the time because there was anger around me, because there were, you know, adults that were very stressed. And then as a child, as a loving child, I come up with these stories of I'm not safe or I'm not lovable or whatever. And then these thoughts will start to manifest as things like Candida and parasites in the body, literally. So so getting back to the cleansing story. I'll just start with the first cleanse. The thing that got me into it was, you know, it was a last resort, or the newest idea. So I did this first 5-day cleanse. It was so profound. Like, I immediately on day 1 or 2, probably even day 1, but I remember pretty much the whole 5 days was just losing so much gunk, like solidified balls of bile and toxins. And I felt amazing, honestly. The first cleanse was incredible. And I say the first, I didn't plan on doing 4, but I ended up doing 4 between the beginning of August and the beginning of December, because it just kept getting deeper and deeper. So this first cleanse was really, really obvious to me. I was basically shedding the surface level anger and resentment, grief, and this stuff around my ex-husband. My ex-husband and every other relationship that I've had in my life, because he was just the last one in a whole string of relationships that showed me certain patterns and conditioning that I wanted to shed and really need to shed, because if I want to create something new in a relationship, then all that stuff had to go. But I was astounded at how much came out of my body. 18 pounds, literally 18 pounds in 2 weeks was shed from my body. That was inflammation, that was toxins of all kinds in every part of my body. I mean, my body had never felt so good. My mind was thinking clear. My joints didn't hurt. I remember sitting like I pretty much, this is pretty much for my whole entire life, no matter when I was into yoga and how much yoga I did or how much stretching I did, like I could sit like this. This was as flexible as I was. And after that first cleanse, after the first few days, I noticed that I was just so much more flexible. Like all the inflammation was gone. And aside from the fact that I was seeing what was coming out of my body, like these black and green balls that were in my liver, in my gallbladder, in other organs in the body. And I won't get into all the details, but I'll tell you some because I could see how long these things had been in my body. So these are emotions that are unprocessed. These are thoughts that are toxic, that are negative, that eventually turn into hard physical matter. And I was so blown away by how good I felt after the first cleanse. And I also had the awareness, very, very clear awareness, that I had just scratched the surface on what wanted to be shed and come out of me. So it was amazing because I've literally been having the knowledge, the intellectual knowledge of knowing that I needed to do a deeper physical cleanse for the last few years. And then I finally put it into action and it was like, wow, so a huge opening, a huge shift. So the second time around, I wish I had my notebook in front of me. The second time around, another 5-day cleanse. So this one started getting into the real roots of where some of these patterns had come from. So after the first cleanse, I felt like that released me from anything I was holding on to with my ex-husband and any other partner. Like I felt so free, so happy, so free, so mentally clear, so grounded and able to continue with life without having to have an emotional catharsis or looping, which was such freedom. Not to mention, I had seen how much, I mean, in weight, how much toxic debris had been shed from my body. Like, holy shit, literally. So of course that motivated me to go a layer deeper. The second cleanse. So this one wasn't physically painful, but it was very vivid in my memories. I went back to, so on day 5, there's what's called this final release, okay? And please, if you're interested in doing the cleanse, reach out to me, especially if you're in the Los Cabos area. We have a whole area set up for it. I'm helping the practitioner now. I am indebted to anyone who wants to commit themselves to this, to helping out, being there in any way I can. And especially if you're going to be going through the program with me, I highly recommend doing at least one in the 6 months we're together. And if we're going to do any kind of ceremonial work with psilocybin, oh my gosh, this is going to like amplify the results of your ceremony by 1,000,000. Just cleaning out the physically manifested old gunk before you go and inquire about whatever your intention is. So anyways, the second one, I was having memories of in utero. I saw the contracts I'd signed with my mom. I saw the contracts I'd signed with my dad. I saw how they were at the time that my mom was pregnant. And I believe that my soul showed me that because it was related to what I was releasing. In order to just bring so much, finally, in my 40 years of life, just this level of love and compassion and acceptance and understanding that I have been working to have and get for so many years. Because what's been cycling is still this victim story of some kind, or anger, or just not understanding certain things about why I am the way I am and why I continue to do things that I thought I had worked through. And this took me back to in utero. So then I realized I had this physical, hardened physical matter, but we could also refer to it as trauma manifested in physical form, emotions that have not been processed. So trauma is not an event that happens, it's the energy that wasn't able to move. And so if it can't go anywhere in our body, and our detoxification system is backed up, well, our bodies are so innately intelligent and beautiful at protecting us and wanting us to be alive that they will literally like hold on to these toxins and store them away in different parts of our body. So doing this second release, I had memories and clarity on the conditioning that I chose as a soul to come in with, and these contracts I had, karmic contracts, right, with my parents, And what was exceptionally cool in this cleanse was that my daughter was there as I was doing my final colon hydrotherapy flush out on day 5. And as I was having these memories, and I mean, I felt like I was deep in ceremony, no medicine, just this release. And she was playing out in the garden, and I can't even remember if my eyes were open or closed. But as I was having these visions, and I was, at the same time, I was seeing the contracts that I had made with my mom and my dad, basically the belief systems that I had decided to believe. And I was doing this work with them in that moment, saying, I'm ready to have a new contract. Like, my way was literally ripping up the contracts and letting them float off into the ethers. And so I was saying, I'm ready to be done with this story. Thank you so much, but I'm ready to be done with this story. And as I was doing that, there was this like yellow octopus looking entity on my daughter, wrapped around my daughter. And as I was ripping up these contracts, it released. It's like the tentacles released, and this yellow blob of whatever it was just floated away from her. And that was the first time I'd ever seen ancestral healing, proof of ancestral healing in the quantum, in the vision. Like, what I was no longer available for, yet I was holding on to when I had her. So I passed that on to her. But then when I was healing that in that second cleanse and that second release, I saw how, as I was breaking those contracts and I was rewriting the story, she was released of all of that karma. What a gift, what a blessing. So powerful. The second two, so I decided to take a couple weeks off and then do another round. And the third and the fourth one ended up being a lot more just, I don't remember any specific visions, but we got into a lot of the other organs in my body. So for example, I released all of these parasites from my liver flukes, I released pancreatic flukes, just layers and layers deeper. The light bulb came on in my mind in a way that don't remember for as long as I can remember. Now, I won't get all the way into my story, but I believe that whether the parasites were there with me for the majority of my life, or just the candida in particular. Like, if we think of candida can grow anywhere in our body, and that's why I really saw it as a protective mechanism, because it grows as film essentially, and it can be anywhere in your body. So the reason why it was painful for me physically was because I felt that this film was literally being released, but it was needing to rip away from the lining of my digestive tract. So as I was releasing, and I don't want to deter anyone from doing this because it's totally worth it, and it's not a pain that you can't endure. It's not like excruciating. You just breathe through it and you get through it. But it's fascinating because I was feeling feelings of like fear almost. Not debilitating fear, but I was feeling that fear. I was feeling that like deep, what I must have felt as a child at times. And so that's kind of where I interpreted that this candida had been with me since I was a kid. And I saw it come out in these like long gooey blobs. I don't mean to be too graphic, but it's really helpful, I think, to know that this is the amount of things that are in our body. If your body is calling for a cleanse, which you intuitively will know, once you get to that point of actually doing it, holy cow, it's such freedom. It's such freedom. So that's what the third and fourth cleanse ended up being for me. So I share this hopefully to give somebody a connection point, an inspiration. If you're looping, if you're not quite sure why you can't let go of that thing that happened 10 years ago, if you still feel like you're in a relationship with a partner that you don't want to be with and you've been broken up for ages, there's stuff still lingering there, and there's nothing wrong with you. If you're still having the same pattern show up in your new relationships and you have done a lot of inner work around it, well, it's probably time to go to the physical cleanse. If you've manifested something physically, like an autoimmune disease or cancer, or, even just joint pain. Like I was stiff and sore, and that's why I wasn't working out, is because I just didn't feel like I had the energy to do so. That's also a great reason to go and clear out your detoxification pathways, because no matter what's in there, whether it's parasites, whether it's just infections, encapsulated infections, or just the hard balls of toxins that came out of my liver were like ping pong balls, like literally ping pong balls. And when we would cut a couple of them open, and they were hard as a rock. Like the stuff that is blocking our pathways is incredible. Not to mention the literally thousands of balls this size, the size of marbles, that were also these hardened balls of toxins that were not shedding themselves because my detoxification pathways were so backed up. You can also look at the not being able to release these things as like the control. Okay, so when we're kids, because we're so loving, we do things to please our parents. And if we live in a chaotic environment, if we've been exposed to something that doesn't make us feel safe, then we will subconsciously and sometimes consciously start to control things around us so that we can feel safe. So fast forward later into life, then we become, perfectionists, or just people who can't let go. So if you think of the large intestine as the place where we let go of things, right? Things process themselves through the body, and we let go through the anus. If we're not letting go of things and we've been holding on to them for 40 years, well, yeah, they're going to start to accumulate. And again, because our body is so brilliant, we literally we would die if we had all those toxins circulating in our bloodstream. So it just starts to store them away. It starts to like gather them and put them away in our liver, or sometimes in our brain, or sometimes in our pancreas, or sometimes in our joints. The fatty tumors, sometimes people have fatty tumors, sometimes obese people, people who have a lot of extra body fat, there'll be a lot of toxins stored in there. So that's what the body does. If we're not allowing ourselves to process these emotions, they will manifest into physical matter. And then it becomes real that we need to go and do the physical cleansing. So that's my story. That's another big thing that happened in 2023. If you are not in Higher, if you have not taken it, or if you are wanting to take it again, or if you haven't heard of it, please check out my website, highersanctuary.com. We're starting the next round of Higher, which is the 6-month coaching program. Quantum healing, manifestation, cleaning up the past, learning about parts work, learning about how to be with these emotions, and layers and layers and layers about how to be growing as a soul in the times that we're in. If you haven't been attuned to that program, check it out. It's 50% off right now. It's a no-brainer. It is so worth it. It will change your life forever, no doubt. And it's information that you'll have access to for a lifetime. And we're gonna need it. We're gonna all need this information. We're gonna all need it, whether you've had it or not. It's nice to go through it with the group as well. But I'm sharing these stories because I, as a teacher of this course, continue to apply these things that I'm teaching on a daily basis. And it's just getting to a deeper and deeper level. This physical cleansing was like so miraculous. My body still feels amazing. I'm still going to continue with the cleanses. I will say that at the beginning of this year, because I feel like there's a little bit more to go. And who knows, maybe there's a lot more to go. I don't know. But I can tell you that shedding 18 pounds, being 140 and dropping down to 122, I've never weighed 122 in my life. I didn't look a whole lot different on the outside other than having lost a little bit of weight. It looked like my body was skinnier because of the inflammation. But that was certainly not why I was doing this cleanse, was to lose weight. But I was astounded at, that was toxic waste. That wasn't fat. That wasn't like maybe a little bit of muscle mass, but oh my God. So if you think about your body, you know your body, and just the layers and layers of things that those infections will cause you to think, that the parasites will cause you to think, because there's a huge connection between your gut and your brain. And I'm telling you, those, like having the sugar cravings, for example, that the candida needs to survive on, after the first cleanse, I would have chocolate every single day and sugar here and there. And like sometimes in the afternoon, I would just have to have a little pick me up of something, anything with sugar, even if it was just a little bit. After that first cleanse, I had lost so much of that candida that was literally, I saw how it was running my decision making. Like, sure, I could have put more free will into it, but it was basically this entity in my body that was making decisions for me. And this is what's happening to all of us when unchecked. So it was profound. And well, that's my story. I hope you can get some inspiration out of it. Again, looking from the soul perspective, like one way this could have all gone down is I could have just sat there and beat myself up forever, or just tried to avoid the fact that I was still feeling these feelings for my ex, or, you know, maybe even at some point try to get back with him because I couldn't stop thinking about him. But I just sat there and contemplated and knew that there was also a big part of me that knew that there was a lesson in this, that knew that I just needed to sit with it and listen and wait for the answer to come. And finally it did. It came, I don't know, on Messenger somewhere with an advertisement that my practitioner Kim was going to talk about this cleanse that she was doing, and everything in my body said, yes, go. And I went, and there it was. So we're guided, we're divinely guided all the time. And then it didn't have anything to do with my ex. He was just the messenger without even being physically present to get me to do this physical cleansing. And then it just went layers and layers and layers and layers deeper. So, wow, right? We're being divinely guided all the time. Our soul is masterful. We need to listen. And when we do, we will reap the benefits. So happy 2024. So happy to continue these conversations, and I will see you